Hello again and happy Sunday. I'm going to be tying another fly today. So you may have just watched me tying the San Juan worm, and I talked about using a bead head. I'm going to do a little bit different version of that today. This is going to be a bead head, but it uses, so I'll just talk about my materials then. Just make it easy. So, all right, so come on, there we go. All right, so using, as always, eagle claw hooks, and I'm using the smallest one of the three that come in the pack. That hook has a bend to it. This phone is not wanting to focus. Maybe it's a little close. It's got a bend to it, so I always straighten that out. Get that going. These are not typical fly tying hooks, but that's what I like to use because they're cheap, and if you lose them, you're not losing everything in your pockets. Alright, so I smoothed over the barbs on that, which is typical for fly tying, fly fishing. My next item is the chenille. This is a bright yellow chenille. It's just a yarn type thing for fly tying. I'll be using Cyclops beads. These beads go on the hook. Gives it some weight and some flash. And then I'll also be using superfine dry fly dubbing. It looks real fluffy like that. So anyway, so I have my hook. First thing I'm going to do is put this little bead. It's very small in my hand. I'm gonna get this on the hook. This is one of the tougher things to do. Alright, here we go. Okay, so this is kind of a big hook, and that's a pretty small bead, but it does the trick. So I'll back this up a little bit. I think that's why it's having trouble focusing. Anyway, all right. So I'll lock the hook in the vise. There we go. I'm going to use white fly tying thread. So after you put on the bead, you want to put some thread on the hook behind the bead to kind of lock it in place. This is a very thick thread, so it doesn't take many turns to do what you need to do. Okay, it's good right there. Snip off the thread. Okay, now I'm going to take, I've cut the chenille. I've cut a piece off about the length that I need it, which is about 3 to 4 times the length of the hook. And I want to take a lighter and melt the end of that chenille just a touch on both ends, just to give it a finished look like that. So it just puts a little bit of a point to it. Then I'm going to lay this up to where it's basically touching the bead. That's going to be a little too long, but I'll fix that in a second. There. All right. I want as much of that to still be showing. I don't like that covered up the bead. I need to move it back again. All right. There we go. Okay. So that is the fly a third of the way finished. I am going to make this shorter while I'm at it. I'm going to go about here. There, that's better. Go ahead and fix that again. Okay. All right. And then the dubbing. So I'm going to back this up a little bit so you can see what's going on. It's not focusing very well. So dubbing, you take some fluffy stuff and you put it on your thread and you wrap around the hook with it, and it holds it down to the hook. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some feather covered bowstring wax. I'm going to put some wax on this thread. Just coat it on there. This is thread that's made, or this is wax that's made for your hunt, like a bow and arrow bow. Alright, so I'm going to take some dubbing, not much, doesn't take a lot. And I'm going to just mix it all up real good so that all those fibers are crisscrossing. And then I'm going to web it out so that it's a big flat piece like that. So it's all webbed out. Then I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to hold it out. I'm going to put this under it. I'm just going to start rolling it. I'm going to roll it always the same direction. And that wax will eventually start to grab it and it'll start to build up. I'll stretch it out. Just keep doing it until you get it the way you want it. So this stuff is made to put as a body on a fly. They also make some that comes in more like a yarn version, and you can use that to make something that looks like eggs, like fish eggs. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap this around several times and make this a real fluffy body. I'm just going to pull that back some. I'm going to finish the fly right behind the bead. Make a few turns. And put a half hitch. One more half hitch. And then the way that I finish this is I take my finger over the hook. I go over my finger, under the hook, over my finger again, let it hang down, and then I snip that so the bobbin drops. And then I take my finger, go through the loop, grab the second one, pull it through, and then put it back where it was. And then I do the same thing again. I go through, I grab the second thread, pull it through, and then in this case I'm going to use a point instead of my finger. I'm going to take it off there like that. I'm going to go down and tighten it in place, and then I'm going to snip it. I'm going to take clear nail polish, and try to get it just on the thread and not on my dubbing. Okay. And I'll call this, I guess, an eggworm, bead-headed eggworm. So tie that on, throw it, and you can make it swim, and it would undulate through the water as it, the tail would give some good movement. This would be great for panfish. It'd be good for, you might catch an occasional bass or smallmouth. But I've caught, most of the flies that I tie, I've caught several fish on each one. So it just depends on what they're eating and what you want to try. So